Society operates on a silent agreement. You give me your energy, and I'll give you mine. Most people accept this tax without question, trading their peace for a seat at the table. But the loner is the one who looks at the price tag and decides the seat isn't worth the cost. The first thing loners refuse is polite interrogation. You know the feeling, being at a gathering where someone starts digging into your life under the guise of getting to know you. They aren't looking for a connection, they're looking for data to categorize you and place you in a box. When you refuse to play the game, the room shifts. You give a short, neutral answer and don't ask them back. You aren't being rude, you're just protecting your perimeter. But to the interrogator, your silence is a direct insult to their perceived social authority and their right to your information. Then there is the refusal of the feedback loop. Someone shows you a project or a life choice that is objectively a disaster, but they are fishing for positive vibes only. Everyone else is pouring on fake, glowing praise, building a house of cards that is destined to fall. The loner refuses to add to the delusion. You don't insult them, but you refuse to offer the manufactured validation they crave. You offer a calm, objective truth instead. Suddenly, you are the unsupportive one, the bitter voice in a choir of professional liars who prefer comfort over reality. Consider the refusal of performative outrage. When the group decides to be offended by something trivial, they expect you to join the chorus. They want your anger to validate theirs. But the loner stays neutral, refusing to rent out their emotional state to a collective whim or a trending grudge. Loners also refuse the digital leash. Everyone else accepts the rule that they must be reachable 24 hours a day. They jump at every notification like a trained animal. The loner leaves the phone behind, opting for a life that isn't constantly interrupted by the demands of the digital crowd. The punishment for this is a specialized kind of guilt tripping. People act worried or offended as a way to reclaim control over your time. They label your boundaries as unreliability because they cannot fathom a person who values their own presence more than a stranger's instant access. Finally, loners refuse the requirement of forced belonging. Most people stay in toxic groups because they fear the void of being alone. The loner embraces the void. By refusing to accept shallow companionship, they become untouchable. If you don't fear being alone, society loses its most powerful leash. The refusal of polite interrogation is a radical act of self-sovereignty that most people simply cannot process. In our hyper-connected world, we're taught that transparency is a social duty, that you owe the world an explanation of who you are, what you do, and why you do it. This is the social audit. When a loner refuses to participate, they are essentially saying that their internal world is private property, not a public park. The punishment for this is the cold label. Because you didn't provide the expected social currency of personal details, you were branded as suspicious, arrogant, or difficult to read. People feel threatened by what they cannot categorize. If they can't find your hooks, they can't pull you into their narrative. But here is the deeper psychology. The interrogator isn't actually interested in you. They are interested in using your answers to validate their own status. By refusing to answer, you deny them that mirror. You aren't just being quiet, you are asserting that your identity is not up for public debate or casual consumption. You understand that your energy is a finite resource, and you refuse to spend it on someone who only wants to use your life as a conversational stimulant. When we look at the refusal of the feedback loop, we see the loner's commitment to the integrity of reality. Most social circles are held together by a validation pact. I'll lie to you about your bad ideas if you lie to me about mine. This keeps everyone feeling safe, but it also keeps everyone stagnant. When a loner breaks this loop by offering actual, unvarnished feedback, they are perceived as a threat to the group's collective ego. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing to support more deep dives like this. By refusing to participate in the lie, you are doing the most supportive thing possible, even if it feels like an attack to the recipient. You are offering them the floor of reality to stand on, rather than a cloud of delusion. Society punishes this with social exile, but for the loner, being exiled from a group of liars is a promotion. You recognize that vibe-based support is a form of slow poison that kills growth. You would rather be the harsh voice that speaks the truth than the kind voice that watches someone walk off a cliff. Your refusal is not about being a critic, it's about being a lighthouse in a sea of foggy, performative kindness. The refusal of performative outrage is perhaps the most difficult thing for the crowd to forgive. We live in an outrage economy where your value is often determined by how loudly you condemn the villain of the week. To remain neutral is seen as a moral failing, or worse, a sign that you are secretly on the other side. But the loner understands that most collective outrage is just a ritual, a way for people to bond through shared hatred, without actually doing anything to solve the problem. It is a social membership fee, paid in cortisol and anger. When you refuse to pay it, you are effectively declaring that your emotional state is not for sale. You are refusing to let the collective decide what you should care about or how you should feel. This creates a profound sense of cognitive dissonance in others. They look at your calm and see it as a betrayal of the cause, not realizing that your calm is the only thing that allows you to see the situation clearly. You aren't being apathetic, you are being selective. You are choosing to save your fire for things that actually matter, rather than wasting it on the shadows that society tells you to fear. The digital leash is a modern shackle that loners were the first to identify and reject. Everyone else accepts the premise that being busy and being available are signs of importance. They have integrated their devices into their very nervous systems, reacting to pings with a shot of dopamine or a spike of anxiety. The loner, however, views the phone as a tool, not a tether. They refuse the unspoken rule that a text message is an immediate obligation. By maintaining a lag between the world's demand and their response, the loner reclaims the rhythm of their own life. Society reacts to this with a mixture of confusion and frustration. They will try to pathologize your boundaries, suggesting that you are disconnected or forgetful. They will use the language of concern to mask their annoyance that they can't reach you whenever they want. But the loner knows that this concern is actually a desire for control. When you are unreachable, you are unmanageable. You are proving that you can exist and thrive without the constant validation of the digital hive mind, and that is a terrifying prospect for those who can't go 5 minutes without a like. Finally, the refusal of forced belonging is the foundation of the loner's power. Most social structures are designed to exploit the human fear of being the odd one out. We accept terrible bosses, boring friends, and suffocating family dynamics simply because we don't want to be the one standing alone. The loner, through a process of dark psychological hardening, has learned that the only thing worse than being alone is being with people who make you feel alone. By refusing to accept shallow or toxic companionship, they take the group's only weapon, the threat of exile, and turn it into a reward. When you don't need the membership, you don't have to follow the bylaws. You are free to be honest, free to be quiet, and free to leave whenever the value of the interaction drops below the value of your own company. This makes you an anomaly. Society thrives on the desperation to belong, and when it encounters someone who is not desperate, it doesn't know how to negotiate. You have reached a level of social immunity where the punishments of the crowd are no longer applicable to your reality. The refusal of social small talk rituals is a deep-seated rejection of the shallow currency that keeps the world turning. Most people accept that they must discuss the weather, the weekend, or the local news as a way to grease the wheels of interaction. It is a script we are all expected to read, a linguistic dance where the steps are predetermined and the outcome is zero. The loner, however, views these rituals as a form of emotional littering. Why fill the air with words that have no weight? Why engage in a transaction where neither party actually gains anything of value? When you refuse to participate in these shallow rituals, you are accused of being socially awkward or rude, but what you are actually doing is protecting the sanctity of language and connection. You are holding out for the golden moment, the rare instance where a conversation actually penetrates the surface and reveals something real. By refusing the small talk tax, you save your energy for the people and topics that actually resonate with your core. You understand that every minute spent discussing something you don't care about is a minute stolen from your own internal growth. Society hates this because it makes the grease visible. It reminds everyone else that their conversations are hollow. When you sit in silence instead of talking about nothing, you are casting a shadow over their performance. You are the confrontational observer who proves that it is possible to exist in a space without filling it with noise. You are reclaiming the silence as a territory of strength rather than a symptom of failure. You understand that social skills are often just a polite way of saying the ability to lie for the sake of others' comfort, and you have decided that your comfort is no longer the secondary priority. One of the most profound things loners refuse is the obligation of reciprocal vulnerability. There is an unspoken rule in modern psychology that if someone shares a trauma or a secret with you, you are obligated to share one back to build rapport. It's a form of emotional matching that feels more like a business deal than a friendship. The loner, however, understands that vulnerability is a sacred thing. It is the inner sanctum of the self. They refuse to hand out keys to that sanctum just because someone else left their door open. This refusal to match someone's emotional spill is often seen as coldness or a lack of empathy. But in the dark psychology of the social world, this refusal is actually a form of extreme self-protection and boundary setting. By refusing to perform vulnerability on demand, you are signaling that your internal state is not a public utility. You are refusing to be manipulated by trauma bonding. You recognize that people often share secrets not to connect, but to hook you into a cycle of mutual dependency. When you stay quiet and offer a calm, neutral space instead of a reciprocal secret, you break the hook. You are proving that you are a whole entity that does not need to bleed in order to belong. This makes you an enigma to those who live in a constant state of emotional leakage. They try to punish your privacy with suspicion, calling you guarded, as if being guarded is a sin. But the loner knows that a fortress isn't built to be mean to those outside. It's built to protect what is precious inside. You are the guardian of your own peace, and you refuse to let anyone bypass your gates with the cheap password of a manufactured secret. The refusal of collective consensus is where the loner truly becomes a danger to the status quo. In any group, there is a hidden gravity that pulls everyone toward the same opinion, the same taste, and the same enemies. This is the tribal mind. Most people accept this because being wrong with the group feels safer than being right alone. The loner, however, has a sovereign mind. They refuse to let the group's vibe dictate their logic. If the group decides that a certain person is a villain, the loner waits until they have their own data to make that call. If the group decides that a certain idea is unquestionable, the loner is the one asking the questions. This refusal to fall in line is treated as an act of treason. The group will use social gaslighting to make you feel like your logic is flawed or that you are missing the point. They want you to doubt your own senses so they can maintain their collective hallucination. But the loner understands that fitting in is the death of original thought. By staying outside the consensus, you maintain the high ground of observation. You see the patterns they are too close to notice. You see the contradictions they are too afraid to admit. This intellectual independence is the loner's greatest asset, but it is also their greatest crime in the eyes of the crowd. You aren't just being difficult, you are being independent in a world that has replaced thinking with scrolling for agreement. You are the social atheist who doesn't believe in the group's gods, and that makes you the only one in the room who can actually see what is happening on the stage. Loners refuse the myth of mandatory participation. Society is obsessed with showing up to the party, the meeting, the protest, the holiday. We are told that showing up is 80% of life. But the loner asks, showing up for what? Most participation is just a form of visual loyalty. You aren't there because you want to be. You are there so people can see you being there. It's a performance of presence. The loner refuses to spend their life as a background extra in other people's movies. They only show up when the scene has actual meaning for them. When you skip the mandatory social event, you are punished with the whisper campaign. People discuss your absence as if it were a tragedy or a snub. They try to make you feel like you are missing out on the life of the group. What they don't realize is that the loner isn't missing out. They are opting in to something much better, their own company. By refusing to perform participation, you are reclaiming the mastery of your own schedule. You are declaring that your time is not a community asset to be distributed by others. This dark psychological flip turns the FOMO, fear of missing out, back on the group. They start to wonder why you don't need them. Your absence becomes more powerful than their presence. You aren't hiding, you are curating. You are choosing to be the architect of your own experiences, rather than a seat filler for a crowd that doesn't actually care if you are there, as long as you are accounted for. You are the one who realized that a no is the most powerful word in the human language, and you aren't afraid to use it. The refusal of the performance of busyness is a strike against the very core of modern productivity culture. We are taught that if we aren't grinding or slammed, we are failing. We are expected to wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor and to talk about our to-do lists as if they were holy scrolls. The loner refuses this church of the grind. They prioritize stillness over scurrying. They value the white space where nothing is happening and nothing is required. When the world asks the loner, "What are you doing today?" and the loner says, "Nothing," it causes a social error message in the minds of the busy. The punishment for this stillness is the lecture on ambition. People will try to save you from your own peace, suggesting that you are wasting your potential. But the loner knows that busyness is often just a high-speed distraction from the fact that most people don't know who they are when they aren't working. By refusing to perform busyness, you are asserting that your value as a human being is inherent, not productive. You don't need to earn your right to exist through a list of accomplishments. This makes you untouchable by the standard tools of corporate or social manipulation. You can't be motivated by the promise of more work or more status if you already value your nothingness more than their everything. You have reached a state of social nirvana where the noise of the world is just background static and your own internal rhythm is the only music that matters. You are the one who stopped running in a race that has no finish line, and by doing so, you've already won. In the end, the loner is the only one who truly understands the rules, because they're the only ones who had the courage to break them and see what happened. What happened? Nothing. The sky didn't fall, the punishments turned out to be hollow, the exile turned out to be a sanctuary. By refusing the things that everyone else accepts out of fear, the loner has built a life on the bedrock of reality rather than the sand of social approval. You aren't a cynic, you are a realist who refuses to be gaslit by a society that values comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. You have learned that belonging is a cage and isolation is the key. You have learned that truth is a weapon and silence is the armor. By the time you reach this level of dark psychological maturity, you realize that the 7 things you refused were never actually social obligations. They were social anchors designed to keep you at the same level as everyone else. By cutting those anchors, you have allowed yourself to drift into a space of ultimate freedom. You are no longer breaking the rules. You are simply living in a world where the rules no longer exist. Don't fear the coldness of the world outside the tribe. The air is thinner up here, but the view is much clearer. Stay in the truth, stay in the silence, and remember, the world can only control those who are still afraid to be alone. If you are your own best company, you are the most powerful person in the room.